All right, here we go. So police shoot 13-year-old boy with autism several times after mother calls for help. Lyndon Cameron was recovering in Utah hospital after suffering injuries to his shoulder, ankles, his intestines, and his bladder. So, I mean, they were spraying all over with shots, apparently. Like, look at that. What is the grouping on that? Shoulder, ankles, intestines, and bladder. A 13-year-old boy with autism was shot several times by police officers who responded to his home in Salt Lake City after his mother called for help. Lyndon Cameron was recovering in a Utah hospital. His mother said after suffering injuries to his shoulder, both ankles, his intestine, and his bladder. Both ankles! Golda Barton told KUTV. Cutvy. She called 911. I almost said 911. Hashtag never forget. To request a crisis intervention team because her son, who has Asperger's syndrome, was having an episode caused by bad separation anxiety, as his mother went to work for the first time in more than a year. By the way, unintended consequences of the lockdown, right? Like, this is now more than a year. Obviously, that's not entirely related to the lockdown. And I don't know how much of her unemployment is, but there is almost spilled an entire glass of Lagavulin. This glass was like this on my desk. Oh my goodness. There are real effects of this lockdown that aren't discussed and aren't explored. And getting away from autism, because I think autism is a magnifying element here to what is really going on. But this lockdown has, especially in kids that are like 2 to 6 years old, where they're growing and forming a lot of opinions and perspective on what's going on in the world around them. And it's now being flooded with familiar adults, devoid of strangers. When they do encounter strangers, half their face is covered up and they don't have necessarily the vocabulary or the other skills to cope with that. And we're going to have a couple year window of kids who will have a different life experience than anyone else on the planet currently living. And we won't know the effects of it forever. And it's one of those things where with the lockdown, this is maybe one of those unintended sort of consequences that I just find interesting. I'm not saying it's like, oh, well, we should never have done anything because we don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things that you don't really think about. You don't know. But, okay. So I just find that interesting. Okay. I said, so here's her saying, he's unarmed. He doesn't have anything. He just gets mad and he starts yelling and screaming, she said. He's a kid. He's trying to get attention. He doesn't know how to regulate. Regulators! Sorry. Call in Warren G instead of the Popo. She added, they're supposed to come out and be able to de-escalate a situation using the most minimal force possible. Instead, she said, 2 officers went through the front door of the home and in less than 5 minutes were yelling, "Get down on the ground!" before firing several shots. He's a small child, she said. Why didn't you just tackle him? He's a baby. He has mental issues. So, I mean, but you do have to wonder what happened, right? Like, you have to wonder what was going on. Like, did the kid bark? Was it ATF? Did they think he was the family dog and shot him? I don't know. But, like, and I don't know how big this kid is. He's 13. He's 13, but it's like, yeah, I need you to come help calm him down. Blam! He's calm now. Oh my God. In a briefing on Sunday, Sergeant Keith Horrocks of Salt Lake City Police told reporters officers responding to reports. Now, this is interesting. Listen to the cop version. Quote, a juvenile was having a mental episode and thought Cameron, quote, had made threats to some folks with a weapon. What? This is where the disconnect is. Something in this story doesn't add up. That's lawyer math right there. That's lawyer math. He's spurging right at us. Come on. No. Don't do that to me. Eric, rude. But okay, seriously though. So the mother says, she calls and says, my kid's having a thing. And then the cop says, oh, we thought he was maybe threatening someone with a weapon. Wait, what? Where'd that come from? Did they have that recorded call? Did they have that recorded call? Oh, hey, Ashley. You like the Lemoyne impressions? I'm glad. I always, in some ways I hate them. But I know some people like them. Police confirmed they did not find a weapon at the scene. In a statement to the Salt Lake Tribune, Mayor Aaron Mendenhall vowed the investigation would be quick. No matter the circumstances, what happened on Friday night is a tragedy. It's not a tragedy. It's an atrocity. They're different. Thank you, Larry Blydner, for trying to educate the world that tragedies are unavoidable sort of natural circumstances. Atrocities are man-caused. They're avoidable. They're preventable. And I expect this investigation to be handled swiftly and transparently for the sake of everyone involved. And then we go on into stuff about Daniel Prude, who we'll talk to. We'll talk about this in just a minute. So I'm gonna skip that one. Demonstrators in Aurora, Colorado, have sought justice for 23-year-old Elijah McClain, black man who went into cardiac arrest shortly after a paramedic administered ketamine as police officers responded to a suspicious person report. Body camera footage contained some of McClain's last words. I'm an introvert. I'm just different. That's all. I'm so sorry. Which is about the saddest last words I can think of. Like, is that an As I Lay Dying song or whatever? Are they an emo band? It sounded very emo. So I'm not sure about the McClain one. This article was the first I'd actually read about it. Oh, goodness. But anyway, let's get back to this. Regarding the incident in Salt Lake City, neurodiverse Utah said in a statement. Sorry. I was trying to figure out who neurodiverse Utah was, but what I'm guessing is it's like an autism awareness, or like a spectrum disorder public interest group, right? Or an interest group. Said in a statement, police were called because help was needed, but instead more harm was done when officers from SLPD expected a 13-year-old experiencing a mental health episode to act calmer and more collected than adult trained officers. And that's a good point. That is what was expected. Now, I don't know. Why didn't they tase him? I mean, the headline is just as bad. It's not quite. It's close to just as bad. It's like, police encountered TISM answered with electroshock therapy. That's not that much better than answering with bullets. But why didn't they tase him? Why didn't they shoot him with a rubber bullet? Well, because most cops aren't just carrying around loaded magazines of rubber bullets. I don't think. Like, if they're going with the idea of crowd control, yeah, but you're not going to just, oh, here, let me Glock up with my rubber bullet magazines for my job. No, they're going to have live rounds because they might need to end someone. Like that might be the thing here. But so I don't think that's reasonable. You're a big police officers with massive amount of resources. Come on, give me a break. Oh, this is talking about that's the mother's quote. Okay, and then the Guardian has their shilling piece. Who cares? So that's the autistic kid is going to have an ostomy bag all of his life now. Oh my God. Goodness gracious. Whew. Yeah. So when on a serious note, the reason I brought up that story is actually I have a point in all this, not just laughing at the horrible circumstances that these people find themselves in. When society is talking about defunding the police, that is not the answer. Defunding the police is not the answer. Now, what may be part of the answer is reducing police involvement in calls like this. I don't know that the kid needed a cop to show up. Maybe the mom thought she needed a cop to show up, but the question is, should they have sent a cop, or should they have sent like a cop and maybe a social worker or something? Somebody else might have been better able to deal with that situation. And that is where we need to be focusing this stuff. Like, there is a legitimate concern for over-policing. And the concern is not merely in the eyes of the people who are being policed, right? It's also in the officers who aren't trained to and shouldn't have to deal with an autistic kid. If these guys don't know how to subdue because they're not trained and they don't have the funding and the time, I'm not blaming the officers for the training here. I'm genuinely not. It's such a unique sort of facet of what they would need to do that they wouldn't encounter often. It's not efficient to train all cops. Like, here's how you handle Asperger's. As if you could even train cops for how to handle all levels of autism. It's called a spectrum for a reason. It doesn't work that way. Not everybody is... autistic people are not a monolith. They don't react the same. And there's gradations and variations to all of that. So it's maybe better for the police to outsource that type of call, or at least supplement that type of call response with someone who is trained to deal with that stuff, who does do it. And maybe it's, supplementing it with a security officer from a mental health institution. I mean, we kind of got rid of those. Now those are just called prison. But there are a few around. But there are also, social workers or various therapists who can actually provide help. And you can, if there's danger, like maybe there was legitimate danger, they thought there was legitimate danger here. Maybe the mom isn't being fully honest with what she said on the phone. Maybe she did mention threats with a weapon. Who knows? I find that hard to believe, but who knows? If that's going on, you send a cop and the mental health worker. But you don't, like, 2 cops isn't helping that situation. And they shouldn't be expected to. They shouldn't be expected to do it. But I mean, come on. Like, why are you shooting the kid, though? Why are you shooting the kid? What is going on? They make special cops and give them short cruisers. Oh, no. Come on. And this one's really bad. But this is merely a symptom. This is merely a symptom of a much bigger and usually less damaging problem. And that is that cops are responding to hundreds to thousands of calls a day that don't need a cop. They need something else. And if we focus resources on getting the proper response, we can then focus police resources on being the proper police response. And to me, that is more important. And one of the critical police resources that we have not utilized well is time. Discussions about budgets and all of that stuff, whatever. Cops have too much on their plate. They don't have time to do to have like sort of mental recoup days where they go in and rather than being out in a stressful and dangerous environment dealing with unexpected encounters on the street, because that's one thing that cops probably don't get enough credit for, even from people like me, is that they're going into every encounter with a stress response. Every single one of them. And this is part training, this is part results or whatever. But in theory, every single one of them could turn violent in a heartbeat. And they don't know until they at least get into the situation. They may not know, until violence actually occurs. But even before they arrive, they don't know the mental state of the person they're going to address. And so they automatically are engaged in a stress response from the start. That is horrifyingly fatiguing, and it's taxing on your mental state. It's taxing on everything. And so and taxation is theft, but it makes it difficult for them to be able to recuperate. So if we were able to give them, by focusing other resources into places that they don't need to be, if we were able to free up time for police to do things like ongoing training and give them a mental break from that stress response specifically. Look, you're going to have a day out of every week that's a predictable thing where you're going to go into a classroom environment and you're going to work on some skill. And you're not going to be worried that someone's going to knife you or shoot you or something. I think that would be a huge benefit to cops. I'm not a